Welcome, AFC Northcasters, whatever. Welcome, everybody, to the AFC Northcast. I am Justin, here joined with Joey.
In Lamar, we trust.
Yeah, sure. Nice one. Anyways, Chad, again, not here with us. He's got some other obligations going on. But he will be coming back at least next week, next calendar week. Might be back tomorrow, but whatever. You'll figure that out when you figure it out. Some more news as far as people on the podcast. We're trying to schedule something with Dylon from last year. And I know Dylan, whatever. Because the teams are going to start playing the Patriots sooner than later. So specifically the Browns, looking at you, right? So he'll probably be on the podcast for the next couple episodes mixed in there, which should be a lot of fun. So it'll be some good times. So keep an eye out for that. But we're not here to talk about that this week. We're here to talk about NFL Week 7. We're doing our review of NFL Week 7. Probably not going to be a super long podcast this time, so you're welcome, I guess. Because all we have to talk about is how the Bengals are what we thought they were, and how the Ravens are maybe not what I at least thought that they were. So we'll get into that.
Eventual AFC champions is what they fucking are.
We'll kick it off though, starting with some news about some teams. So, Joey, what are specifically? I know you have some news about your potential future AFC North champions.
Yeah, big Ravens news, injury wise. Pernell McPhee got put on the IR this week, and that should mean that the Ravens will be pretty active in the trade market, or at least look to be pretty active in the trade market. There were rumors that they were trying to talk to the Redskins about Ryan Kerrigan, but that Dan Snyder's asking price was too high, which is pretty typical for an 0-7 Dan Snyder to be trying to fucking police people with no power at all. Mm-hmm. So the Redskins are an interesting team because they have a lot of talent at linebacker, specifically outside. It's pretty much the strength of their team. Mm-hmm. So they figure to be pretty big players in the market, but outside of that, there aren't any really big names on the trade block.
So wait, so real Ravens... quick. So Pernell McPhee, do you know what happened? What's wrong with him specifically? So everybody knows.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I could tell you.
Is there a prospect for him to come back at all through the season? I mean,
no,
I know y'all
he's
got
on the IR.
Week.
He's done for this year.
Gotcha.
Torn tricep.
The old Joe Thomas is what I like to call it.
That's an ender. Ended up not ending Ray Lewis's season his last year, but he was. Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's got his ass on some deer antler spray or some shit like that. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, I mean, hell, if a torn tricep can end 10,636 snaps, then,
Yeah. Hard to push with the torn tricep.
Yeah.
So it's just more after a pretty good defensive performance, a really good defensive performance. I think surprised a lot of people against the Seahawks. Another blow. Everybody wants to talk about the 0-7 Bengals and how shitty their injury luck has been this year. Yeah, I would argue the Ravens may have had just as bad injury luck.
Well, of course, I mean,
on defense,
it's tough. I'm not gonna say it's tough to argue. But it's tough for people to realize because the team is they're successful right now, right?
Right, because they're winning.
Same thing with the Browns, right? I mean, I don't think that the Browns' misfortune is to maybe your guys' scale just quite yet. Obviously, there has been some misfortune with the injuries. But it's hard for whatever reason, people don't want to highlight the fact that, Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams are both out when everyone just wants to talk about Odell. People don't want to talk about the fact that Higgins is out, even though he's like a big favorite target for, not physically big, but when you got Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry on the team, right? But all three of those guys, like you said, we're probably about to say, are big playmakers on that team. So
yeah, and for most of the season,
right. Njoku, right? Fractured wrist, IR. So he's done. Again, like you said, or like I was saying, people don't want to talk about that because they're just like, well, why is Odell getting whatever? But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, sorry, you were saying not really a whole lot more trade news for the Ravens?
Not yet, but I would expect something, man. They certainly, just from a depth perspective, they certainly can't continue the season with the couple Judon and Tyus Bowser,
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Mack. Like they got to Jalen Ferguson, excuse me. Like they got to do something.
Right. So as far as the Browns making any trade moves, because while we're I guess on the trade stories, there is some rumors being flipped around that the Browns are trying to negotiate for Nate Solder, tackle from the Giants, which would definitely help bolster the offensive line, especially just got rid of Austin Corbett. Again, not that Austin Corbett was anybody special, as Chad had just learned for the first time on the last episode. However, it's important that they keep a heavy rotation, and if they can have someone that improves at the position, that's obviously going to be significant. So, yeah, offensive line. So, something Joey and I had toiled about whether or not we're going to discuss, but we decided that we're going to, is there's, rumors about the Browns trying to trade Odell Beckham, but, like, it's fucking... Joey said it perfectly before we started. It's like message board, Reddit type stuff that people are just throwing around, trying to like put into the air so that maybe it actually starts to happen. I think that the message boards got a little in on themselves because for the Odell Beckham trade from the Giants, I think that's like people were talking about that for like 2 years ago, or at least as soon as Jarvis got there, people were talking about it. So they're like, oh, maybe we can will this into existence again, And it's like I don't think that it's credible at this point at all. Like I had somebody, a friend of mine that's not a Browns fan at all, messaged me today and was just like, hey man, like what do you think about the possibility of Odell? But it's just like, dude, it's not a fucking thing.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's stupid. Just some virgins in their mom's basement getting on Brown's message boards.
The incels, be careful, man.
And because what are you gaining? You're not gaining anything from that.
Right.
What are the odds that you're going to draft somebody as good as Odell Beckham Jr.? Really, really fucking low.
Right.
I don't care how good your GM is. Like, the odds are so low. Like he's like one of the fastest players to whatever 1,000 yards in this many 100-yard games, in the types of the pace of like Randy Moss type guys and stuff like that. Like, get out of here with that whack shit. Just because you're 2-4 right now, like just relax, guys.
Right.
Just relax.
Yeah. So I don't know.
It's not time to blow it up yet for the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
Chill.
Not quite yet. Especially when, again, like you've got this, and I think that's maybe why people are like this, but you've got this marquee roster, right? Baker Mayfield, I know he still has a lot to prove, but I think it's fair to say that he's a marquee name. Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, right? Denzel Ward, that Pro Bowler. As much as people don't care about offensive line, Joel Bitonio, Pro Bowler for a couple years. He's a couple-time Pro Bowler, right? So I don't know, picking up people. Joseph Schobert, all right, top 10 in tackles since he joined the league every year. All right, just saying, give him some love, guys. So I just looked it up actually real quick. Apparently, Pro Football Focus, this is from the Ravens. Is this? Yep. Yeah, this is from the Ravens website a couple hours ago, posted that Pro Football Focus names Michael Bennett as a potential trade target for the Ravens. This is on the Ravens webpage for their news page. What do you think about that?
I would love it. Yeah. I'm in love with Michael Bennett on and off the field. I think he's fantastic. Him and his brother are amazing humans. And him and Earl Thomas are boys. The Ravens have had a history of making moves like that where the offseason before the first Super Bowl, they signed Shannon Sharp, who who was like apparently boys with Ray Lewis for a little while, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd be super down for Michael Bennett. He is a plus defender and as good as anybody that a team's willing to part with, probably, except for John Gruden, who just deals away generational talent.
I know, at this point it's like remarkable almost. Like, jeez. I'm trying to Google some Steelers transactions to see if there's anything that's supposed to be happening.
There was an arrest.
Oh, what was this?
Anthony Chickalo.
Anthony Chickalo on reserve commissioner exempt list. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, they had a domestic disturbance arrest during the bye week.
How'd you spend
really
your
like
bye
an
week, Anthony?
impact player,
Yeah,
but
still
noteworthy. He's if you follow the Steelers or even the AFC North, you at least know the name.
Right. Yeah, we got some news last week too, but nothing really. Let's see here. 13 hours ago, Mike Tomlin identifying players acquired via trade.
Yeah, we'll talk to Chad when he comes back.
Yeah, it's better to talk to Chad. You're right. But it looks like it's just a speculation article. So lastly, the Bengals. Anything going on with the Bengals that you're aware of?
AJ Green was like the big name that was being fantasy booked in a bunch of trades. But the two big teams that he was named to, linked to, I guess, in rumors, were the Pats and the Niners. And both the Pats and the Niners traded for non-AJ Green receivers 2 days ago.
Right.
With the Pats getting Mohamed Sanu and the Niners getting Emmanuel Sanders. So it looks like maybe the Bengals aren't looking to trade him, which is fine. He's going to be a free agent after this year anyways. So it'd be wise for them to try to get some kind of value out of it if they're not expecting to re-sign him. So I don't know. Maybe someone will surprise us. Somebody like Green Bay or Indy or somebody like that. That I know Indy probably has some cap room. They've got a really good situation.
Yeah, they do have a lot of cap room. Yeah.
Someone that can afford AJ Green. That was a big roadblock apparently with the Pats, was they had like $2 million in cap space, and so there would be a lot of restructuring or kind of a lot of financial gymnastics to be able to make a deal for AJ Green anyways. Who makes like $15 million a year.
So before we get into the Bengals, because I think that is a nice lead into the Bengals, but I'm going to pump the brakes real quick because there's something that I wanted to talk to Joey about that he had not heard about. Maybe you have heard about, maybe I have heard about, or I have heard about, maybe you have not heard about. I know I just completely fucked that up, but whatever. The point is that I know something, guys. I have news, all right, for once. But anyways... this leads in a little bit to next week, but from the Patriots, all right? So apparently Adam Schefter had put out, and it's like big circulating news, because Adam Schefter typically is... Huh?
Schefter.
That's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. But anyways, he typically is, one of those guys that puts out facts, right? These are the things that are happening. This is what it is. And he's not really much of a speculation journalist, if you will. But he put some heavy speculation out there today, so people are treating it like Bible, but there's interesting follow-ups. But I'll tell you what it is, all right? So, Tom Brady put up his home for sale. His trainer put up his home for sale, and his contract is structured to allow him to void at the end of this year, if he would so choose, all right? So people are taking that as, religion of, well, Tom Brady must be leaving, you must be leaving Boston, right? Like, what's going on, right? Tom Brady responded to that, and I don't know, maybe this is just him as a part of, like, the Patriot way and being around Belichick, but he denied absolutely none of it. Not a single piece of it. He, in fact, went on to talk about, for, the majority of answering the question, about how he really likes about how fluid he is, and he's at a point in his life where he can just kind of do what he wants, and he can kind of control his own destiny, and all these kinds of things that are leading people to be like, whoa, wait a second, because if that was not a real thing, like he would have said like, no, come on, right? And just moved on from it and just been like, that's stupid. But all of those things kind of in the same breath or whatever is a very interesting thing to think about, I think.
Yeah, now that you bring it up, I'd heard something. I didn't listen too much. I want to say what's up to CJ, Steelers Nation, tuning in to watch us without Chad. Watch us shit all over the Steelers while he's away.
We will do it.
Hold us accountable.
Yeah.
I think that Tom Brady has... I think him and Bill both have egos to where... they wouldn't mind proving that they could do it without the other.
Right. There's been talk about that, yeah.
And so I think for Tom, he understands that that likely means a stop after the Pats before retirement.
Right.
Which, especially if he wants to play till he's 45, like, I don't think the Pats are in a position to get rid of him yet. They don't have the next guy unless Hoyer is a bridge to the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, unless they really believe in Jared Stidham, but the little bit that he's played has been pretty bad in the regular season, at least. So, yeah, I mean, there might be some validity to it. I know there's teams out there that would love him. Looking at you, Chicago. You know, they're a
that would be a perfect,
they're a serviceable quarterback away from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender with the way their defense is. And that means they're a Tom Brady away from, being even more than that.
The Le Batard show was going a little bit more vindictive than that. And they were talking about different places that he could go just to like stuff it to Belichick, right? So like going to the Giants, right? To kind of stuff it, or the Jets even, which the Jets, I don't think that's really very practical with Sam Darnold. I have some faith in him.
Miami, warm weather.
Yeah.
It's a retirement town.
I know, he's already fucking 80 years old, so he can just retire in Miami and just go straight from the stadium to the old folks home, right? But
Gary said Bill Belichick could turn a wet towel into an MVP candidate.
Exactly. So
the Wolf Pack, that quarterback room from the Tom Brady suspension year, Garoppolo, Brady, and Jacoby Brissett, they're like combined 17-2 this year. So
yeah,
Belichick
with the two losses
winners,
coming from Brissett, which doesn't have much help.
Yeah.
So at least, he does. That's not a fair statement, actually. I had thought about some possible scenarios because people talked about, will he retire? Is this all just rumors and he'll continue to play in New England, or will he get traded to another team? And for some reason I felt like, letting my mind wander, thought like, what if Tom Brady went to go be like a coordinator or something like that, or help out with another team because he just still has that love for the game. And then I played this video out in my head of some quarterback just like not fucking listening, not doing what he's telling them to do, and just telling them to get the fuck out of the game, tears their pads off, throws their pads on, and just like takes a team to the Super Bowl, like, because he's Tom Brady. And I just couldn't see him being anything other than like an aggressive asshole in as like a coordinator or a coach or something like that.
Did you see the Belichick like sideline smile against the Jets?
No.
In any like memes or something? So the Jets had 2 penalties on them on like shitty offensive plays anyways.
Right.
Back-to-back plays. And so the Pats declined the penalties in back-to-back plays. And there's like a loophole that causes like a clock runoff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the most emotion you'd ever see. It wasn't even like a proper smile, but it was like the corners of his mouth started to like curl up like a fucking Grinch or something. Oh, he's awesome. I love Bill Belichick so much.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll say this, and we'll put this all on the table so that Dylan has to listen to the podcast so he can respond to it next week. But I'll put this one last thing on the table, and something I've always said, and at least said for when the first GOAT argument kind of came on Tom Brady's table, or to the table with Tom Brady, right? And at the time, my argument was that maybe not greatest of all time, but that Peyton Manning was better because of his ability to not only make the calls and changes on the line. Like that happened like every single play. He went to the line, read the defense, and changed everything, right? So he was the coordinator. He was the person calling the plays, right? Tom Brady has a lot of masterminds behind him. The other big deal to me was when Peyton Manning went out, the Colts went like 1-15 that year, right?
Yeah.
You know, when Tom Brady goes out, they still continue to win games.
They missed the playoffs,
Right.
but they were like 10-6 or 11-5 with Matt Castle.
Right. So, and even the year that he was out for the suspension too, because he hasn't missed a ton, but he had that year.
4-0.
Yeah, they were still. So, I think, in my opinion, yeah, maybe he should go somewhere and prove it. I'd love to fucking see it. Wouldn't it be wild to see Tom Brady in like a different uniform, man? That would be like one of those players that would just be. It was like seeing Brett Favre in a Vikings uniform. It's just like, what the fuck?
Tom Brady is just like the Patriots this year. Who has he played? Fucking nobody.
Yeah. People have actually brought that up. I think that the defense has more than proved themselves to that respect, because people have actually brought that up this year of like who of the Patriots played.
We got a listener question. CJ said, except for the Maryland Ravens, who in the NFC, I think he might means AFC, do you think could knock off the Pats if they made it to the big dance? Maybe it is the NFC then, at this point in the season. I think the Niners are equipped. That defense is legit. And Shanahan, I think, would love to get some revenge for the 28-3 Atlanta Falcons thing that he was offensive coordinator for.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Where Bill Belichick pretty much pantsed him in the second half. I think the Saints, once they get Drew Brees back, it has to be an offense. It has to be somebody with a good offense. I don't think the Patriots offense is as adept as they've been in the past, and signing Mohamed Sanu is kind of an indication that they're just going all in on the like short to intermediate passing game. Because if you look at it, he's not actually like a deep threat guy like AJ Green. Man, we're doing like a full ass deep dive on the Patriots right now, with on the cusp of having Dylan on the podcast.
I know.
So I don't think their offense particularly scares anybody from a personnel standpoint, but the defense is healthy, and not just from like an injury standpoint. Their defense is stout, and so you need an offense that has not only personnel but scheme to even have a chance.
Yeah, I think the 49ers is a nice one because of the genius that I think Shanahan is in his ability to kind of Bill Belichick teams, right? Beat you at your weakness in these crazy ways to figure out how to beat you, right, with what you're bad at. Sorry, I got off track when Joey did that. But anyways, here's the other team that I actually think would be interesting, because I think there is still a little bit left to prove on the 49ers offense, a little bit. But the Packers, right? Green Bay's been on fucking fire this year, right? Aaron Rodgers has been playing lights out. When they played the Cowboys, they fucking embarrassed the Cowboys until the fourth quarter, when I think, teams kind of start to back off a little bit, and the Cowboys were like, let's take advantage of it. Maybe we'll come back, right? But, I think the Packers have, for me at least, really vastly, I think, exceeded expectations this year so far.
Yeah, and their defense is much improved. Aaron Rodgers seems to be better when his best receivers are out and he's throwing to fucking Jay Kumaro and jobbers like that. Dudes that look like me with long hair. CJ saying maybe even Seattle. I think that's a fair point, and I was kind of saving that for next week before the Ravens play the Pats. One thing that no matter how good you are, and you see it a lot more in college because mobile quarterbacks are a lot more around in college, no matter how good you are schematically or personnel wise on defense, one thing you can't account for and you can't game plan for is improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that Russell Wilson has absolutely mastered. And as a unit, they've mastered it on offense. And it was evident in the Ravens game this past week. Like, it's infuriating when he extends plays, how good they are. The receivers are so good at that scramble drill and getting open. And it's really hard to cover guys for that long, no matter how good you are on defense. And then the other thing is his run ability. Any play, you can have it covered perfectly. And the run ability of a guy like a Russell Wilson or a Lamar can beat you on that play anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good pick too, I think, Seattle.
As far as the Saints go, it's interesting because last year I think that they could have. I mean, I think a lot of teams probably could have done it last year. Man, what a disappointment. But the Saints, it's just one of those weird things that for me, you know, for the last like 3 or 4 years at least, they've just been so fucking excruciatingly good. But like somehow something ends up happening. I think that the Saints, for the last couple of years at least, have had the capability to do so, but it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know, man. I think Belichick would be able to figure it out. Because the Saints just have something. They do not have any Saints on their side. Hey, that was bad. But anyways, let's.
Jeez, man, the Ravens had their biggest win of the season. We spent a half hour talking about the fucking NFC.
Yeah, well, let's roll into the Bengals. So. We talked a little bit about AJ Green and the potential for his trade value and all this stuff. So one of the things I wanted to highlight about the game, there's a lot we have to talk about. Well, maybe not a lot, but that we have to talk about. But AJ Green apparently is healthy right now. Like, people are saying that he is healthy and capable of playing, but he's on the sidelines just kind of jogging around and wearing a sweatshirt and, you know, has the earpiece in, trying to help people out. And there were some considerations or some questions that people had about it that we're making them think maybe AJ Green is kind of trying to tell them, like, hey, I'm not coming back this year, so you guys need to figure this out. And, like, this is your season to kind of figure out how to use other people and how to scheme things when you don't have, you know, this safety valve that can catch fucking almost anything you throw his way, you know? Which I think is an interesting take, personally, especially if it is, you know, fact that he's pretty healthy right now and at least capable of trying to play.
Yeah. He practiced in individual drills at the end of last week, and we talked about it in the preview episode about, like, well, maybe we get AJ back this week against the Jags. Everybody was kind of expecting it. He was out there in practice warming up and didn't dress for the game. So I haven't read much about what his situation is, how healthy he actually is, but I know Packers and Saints Twitter are still blazing hot for AJ Green.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, yesterday the Pats signed Mohamed Sanu, and then today they put Josh Gordon on the IR. And you know that video clip of Belichick in Detroit, like walking right past that kid that was like asking for a high five. Mm-hmm. Like coming out of the tunnel, like walking with a purpose and blowing off that kid. It was like Pats put Josh Gordon on the IR. It's like Bill Belichick walking to the table to offer the Bengals a 4th round pick for AJ.
Right. Jeez. Yeah, I don't know. So talking about actual game points. It's funny because we had mentioned last episode, and I feel like we just did him the fucking dirty, but we had mentioned last episodes how Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket, had commonly has interceptions, but we had said, look, if you watch the footage from what we've seen over the last at least 2 years, a lot of them aren't really his fault. This game, like, complete fucking opposite. He threw some awful, like, terrible, very bad, no good passes that were in just the shittiest possible location that were absolutely his fault. Like, they weren't tipped balls. They weren't, like, low effort by receivers. They were horrible. And, like, in the late in the third quarter, I think, after his, like, fifth or sixth interception or whatever it was, I don't remember, it was just getting to, like, I think it was, like, 2 drives in a row at that point, or 3 drives in a row he had to turn over. It was just like, fuck. And all I could think about was like, man, we look like idiots right now. But yeah.
So that was the turning point in the game. So on the Bengals' first drive of the second half, they had another drop, and that made 5 drops for the game. So his receivers were also not helping him out.
No, sure.
But this game was really weird because the Jaguars were dominating time of possession. They were dominating yards, and they couldn't convert in the red zone. They got stuffed on like a 4th and goal from the 1 on like their opening drive and came away with no points.
Mm-hmm.
So the Jags were dominating the game, but it was still close. And so it kind of felt like one of those games where it was just kind of meant to be for the Bengals. We're just going to find a way to pull it out. Hit right. John Ross on a deep pass, or Tyler Boyd on an 83-yard touchdown on 3rd and 17, like typical weird Bengals shit. And then the pick 6 happened. And then the first pass of the next drive was also intercepted, and that was it. And then it was game over from there.
For sure. It was... sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they couldn't stop Fournette. They had absolutely laughable rushing statistics. Joe Mixon had 10 carries for 2 yards in this football game. That's an atrocity. That's an abortion of an offensive game plan. Like, it's so bad. And at this point, we talk about the offensive line, and a lot of times when we talk about offensive lines, we talk about it from a pass blocking standpoint. We talk about, the offensive line sucks, and so the quarterback doesn't have time, this and that. The offensive line sucks for the Bengals, and where it's really manifesting itself is that Joe Mixon has nothing to work with.
Right. Yeah. It's unfortunate because, it's obviously, I think, too early to call him like generational or anything like that, but somebody who was most certainly a standout running back for 2 seasons at least, has the potential there. I don't think what happened is all of a sudden in the 3rd season, everyone's like, aha, this is how you stop Joe Mixon, right? I think that, their offensive line is just falling apart, and maybe a little bit of scheming, But yeah, it's bad. It's no good. And again, it's so interesting because I was looking at some other stuff with the Bengals from years past as far as offensive line, and it looks like they actually have been trying to address it for like years now, and they just like keep failing. It's like the curse of Paul Brown is like what people are calling it, right? But which is funny because people say the same fucking thing about Cleveland, but whatever. But yeah, it's so unfortunate. Rebuild. and the thing that sucks about it too is that with Andy Dalton just having as bad of a game as he just had, like, he really hurt his own value like a ton. Something I wanted to kind of point out too was that, you said they couldn't stop Fournette, so on and so forth. But up until the 4th quarter, the Bengals were only behind by 1 point, right? Yeah. And they kept toe-to-toe with the Jags for, I think, a lot longer than what people expected. And I was definitely shaking my head like, what the fuck does this even mean? And I think it's more towards maybe the Jags felt overly comfortable and tried to do some, cute shit that they hadn't done a lot with Gardner Minshew. I don't know. I don't watch the Jags enough to put anything like real or tangible into that argument because the Bengals defense is not good. And I don't think the Bengals defense has just been waiting for their matchup with the Jaguars, So it was really strange. I guess you can tip your hat to them, but the Bengals defense for at least holding on that long. But it was
and to Dalton's credit with the interceptions and things like that, Gary just pointed out. So the Bengals had 33 total rushing yards in the football game. Andy Dalton had 33 yards. Alex Erickson had -2 yards, and that nullified Mixon's production, which is an affront to the word production.
Yeah.
But Erickson actually had a standout game in the passing game. But I mean, to ask a guy like Andy Dalton to carry your offensive load, completely carry your offensive load, with Tyler Boyd and Alex Erickson,
And
Auden Tate, Tyler Eifert, like that is a tall order, man, for a maybe average plus quarterback. Like,
right.
So,
man,
yeah, the game was closer longer than I expected it to be, and the Bengals just fell apart at the end. Bad teams find ways to lose games.
Instead of Tom Brady, we should have a fun game of where would Andy Dalton make the biggest impact. I just in my mind was
Chicago?
I was just about to say Andy Dalton going to Chicago. Yeah. Man, that would be huge.
Tennessee.
I really think
maybe.
I can't say anything positive about Tennessee at least until next year. So sorry, guys, it's not.
I don't even know who they are.
Yeah,
but he can't be worse than Tannehill and Mariota. I don't think.
Yeah. So yeah, man, someone like Dalton going to the Bears, getting a good amount of picks for him or something like that. I don't know. I think that would be really advantageous to Andy Dalton. First off, but I don't think it would negatively impact the Bengals enough. So a lot of times teams won't trade to other teams. So the Steelers didn't want to trade, Antonio Brown to the Patriots because of that. I think that there's there's no investment between those two that I think that trade would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Bears fans are way out on Mitchell Trubisky, by the way. Yeah. Apparently at a Blackhawks game, they showed a kid in the crowd who was wearing a Mitchell Trubisky jersey, and the crowd booed.
No, that poor kid.
The Bears fans are done with Mitchell Trubisky. They've seen enough.
Mitchell the Bitchel. That sucks, man. I feel bad for that kid, man. You know who we should really blame is that kid's dad. That's whose fault it really is.
Yeah.
Shit. Well, I don't know. I guess
kid a Khalil Mack jersey.
Yeah, right.
Come
for
on.
Sure, man. Come on, what you doing? I don't know. I guess we'll see. Yeah, just do that trade. Just trade 1-for-1. Andy Dalton for Mitchell the Bitchel. And
see what happens.
See what happens. Right. He can be like a backup to what's his name? The guy they just picked up this year. Looked good in the preseason. Finley. Yeah. Looked pretty good in the preseason. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's so after this game, you're 0-7. I think it's probably time to start looking at when do we try to evaluate these young quarterbacks that we have.
Yeah,
we got a little bit of extended Jeff Driscoll time last year. I think it's the Bengals, if they were smart, I understand that the offense is limited around a guy, but you can't have such a high draft pick and fuck it up when you don't have an apparent answer at quarterback. You have to take the opportunity when it presents itself. And there's no telling that if you aren't sure what you have and you don't take a quarterback, you can still take a unit changing offensive lineman or defensive lineman or something like that, and then you fuck up next year and manage to go 4-12 or 5-11, and you miss out on quarterback talent. This is the year, if you have a top 2 pick for Justin Herbert or Tua, depending on who you like, you need to know what you have. It's your responsibility as a front office to know what you have in your quarterback room so that you can make an informed decision in the draft this year. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. The Bengals need to get the value that they can while they have it, is my opinion. So like we were saying, AJ Green's on his way out the door at the end of this year, so they should really try to trade for him before they just kind of let him go. But maybe teams aren't really biting at that fish because they know that they're, They're like, well, why would I trade now when I know that he's going to be available next year? Unless it's one of those teams that feels it's a receiver away, right?
Yep.
So, but we'll see. And again, Dalton to the Bears. We should just start that rumor and just start fucking, parading for it. Or like I said, we should just have like a segment where we just talk to each other about where's Andy Dalton going this week.
Where in the world is Andy Dalton?
Yeah, Andy Dalton to the Vikings, replacing Kirk Cousins. That's like a 1-for-1 right there. And again, to think that the Vikings are probably kicking themselves in the fucking feet or in the shins or whatever for getting rid of Case Keenum. Like, what a wild world we live in. What an inconsistent year everyone's been having, man. It's so fucking weird. I don't know. Me and Sam were talking about that earlier week. Or earlier today, actually. About how these teams are so inconsistent.
Kirk Cousins is this Thursday is like the story of like something's got to give, because he's been really, really bad on primetime.
Yeah.
But he typically beats bad teams.
Plus, it's the Kirk Cousins revenge game,
bad
dude.
Teams, plus revenge game.
Revenge game.
Speaking of revenge games.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about this Earl Thomas revenge game, which is pretty significant on the scale of revenge games. The last time the Seahawks saw Earl Thomas in pads and a jersey, he was flipping off the coaching staff from the injury cart.
Right.
And then they asked Pete Carroll before the game leading up, like, are you and Earl gonna like talk? And he was pretty much like we'll see what happens, and right. Like if we do, we do, but like
if we don't, we don't.
No, Gary, right. Yeah, not gonna go out of our way pretty much to talk to each other. And they walked right past each other after the game. Didn't even look at each other.
Not a damn word. Not a damn word. Well, yeah, man. That's a really good segue. So roll us in, man. Give us the breakdown. What happened?
Oh boy. So this was kind of a sloppy game. It was gray and rainy for most of it. After the first quarter, it was 3-0. The first play of the game was like a 50-something yard bomb to Miles Boykin, which was nice. The Ravens drove down on the back of 3 pretty large chunk passing plays, which kind of had me worried that was going to be the game plan. And I was like, no, not again. In love with the pass game.
Mm-hmm.
But that ended up luckily not being the case. But they had to settle for a field goal, and your initial thought is like, well, that's trouble, because playing against a good team in their stadium, like, you have to convert in the red zone. The good news was that the Seahawks also didn't convert in the red zone in this game. They were 1 of 4 on red zone trips for cashing in for touchdowns. The touchdown was early in the second quarter to Tyler Lockett. It was a weird play where like he and Marlon Humphrey were kind of tied up, and Russell Wilson was doing the whole scrambling around thing. And Humphrey saw a flag get thrown on him and just kind of stopped on the play.
Mm-hmm.
And then Russell Wilson threw a touchdown to Tyler Lockett, and so the Seahawks declined the penalty.
Right.
So it was weird. The Ravens were more pass early, but they definitely ran the ball late. Marcus Peters started the game and ended up having the turning point in the game, the pick 6 down the sideline in the third quarter, which took it from, I think it was 13-13 at halftime, and that pick 6 made it 20-13, and the Ravens kind of coasted from there.
Talk about return on investment, man. Like, immediate.
Yeah, immediate. Yeah.
Right.
And it was funny because we talked about how much more than any other team the Seahawks have picked on him with Tyler Lockett. But I think some of that may have been defensive scheme a little bit too. I'd like to think Wink Martindale knows how to use a guy. And if the Ravens are targeting somebody, that I think they probably have a plan for him. They're not just blindly targeting a guy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, fantastic return on investment immediately from Marcus Peters. The other defensive touchdown the Ravens had was in the fourth quarter. Marlon Humphrey returned a fumble for a touchdown. So that's all great. The only other touchdown in the game from the Ravens was a Lamar Jackson run in the red zone on 4th and 2. And I think that kind of leads me into like this game for me was kind of Lamar's rite of passage. The way that he was carrying himself, the way that he was commanding the offense, he was holding offensive linemen accountable on delay of game penalties and silly mental errors that were costing them drives. And you can see him becoming the leader of the football team. He's been pretty reserved emotionally. You don't see a lot up or down from him. He was very, very, I guess, boisterous in this game. Very clearly frustrated when the offense was sputtering a little bit in the first half. And that's, for me, I loved it. I think he's kind of coming into his own as a young player. But even as a young player, as a quarterback, he needs to be the leader of this football team. And I think that he was. I think he's got the right mindset for it. And he put the team on his back, man. He didn't have a great passing day. Mark Andrews cost him quite a bit of yards and a passing touchdown with drops. I think especially rushing, he really put the team on his back. And that 4th and 2 that kicked this whole Lamar Jackson talk off. The field goal unit was on the field. And John Harbaugh, when Lamar came off, said, "Do you want to go for it?" And Lamar said, "Hell yeah, I want to go for it, coach." And so John Harbaugh called a timeout with the field goal team on the field with like a 4th and 2 from like the 10-ish and sent the offense back out. And on that play, Lamar scored a touchdown. So that was the turning point in the game for sure. As far as Lamar's maturity, I think that really signaled like this is Lamar's team now, and there is no question. Even though they're run first, like the leader of the offense is Lamar Jackson, and the guys seem to love him. And it was just an all-around awesome team win from the Ravens.
I think what was most interesting to me is how the game played out, right? So here's what I mean by that. The Ravens defense, we just basically spent last week talking about how it was like a shadow of its former self, no longer the strength, something that's an oddity even in our division, right? And all of a sudden, the Ravens defense played like the Ravens defense. But then to the flip side of it, the offense, there's not a lot of positives to kind of go on there other than obviously Lamar Jackson's 100 and something yards rushing, right?
Yep.
And his rushing touchdown, which is kind of what everybody expected from Lamar Jackson going in to the season. I think it's interesting to me how the offense feels as though it's been regressing since game 1 from a pass-heavy offense to what it kind of expected itself to be. Now, some of that I think might be in part to the fact that as the season goes on, like we said, the Ravens kind of have this high point in their season with difficulties, so they kind of got to start out really easy by saying, well, let's pass while we have an opportunity. Okay, well, let's kind of do what we're good at, and then maybe they'll kind of come back as the season, finishes off a little easier. That's my prediction, I guess. But I think it is interesting to see them kind of do that. And I think regression is a harsh word because, like you said, Lamar Jackson is growing for sure, but kind of regress into what people expected them to be. And even for the Seahawks, it's really strange, man. Like, Russell Wilson couldn't get the offense going, right? The defense, which we know has had some problems, but, the wasn't able to stop Lamar Jackson, who you should think would be your number one, almost your number one concern, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting. So
Yeah.
me being my tinfoil hat that I am, I came up with this theory that the Seahawks are less worried about the Ravens in the playoffs than they are about the Browns in the playoffs. So what they did was they put their full game plan in against the Browns to make sure that the Browns stay behind a game, go into that tough part of their season, or stay in that tough part of their season with all these losses, destroy their morale, then they don't have to worry about playing them. I'm sorry, not in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl, right? But then with the Ravens, if the Ravens make it there, they're like, look, we know we can beat them. Let's give them a win. Let's make it easy so that they can advance and we don't have to worry about facing the Browns. So there you go.
Yeah, that's definitely what happened.
Totally what fucking happened. Mark my words. So you'll see when the Super Bowl conferences happen. All right, when the Seahawks are there, they'll say, "Hey, we've literally been game planning for this since week 7." So
there's one of two explanations for the Seahawks offense, specifically the pass offense, kind of sputtering.
Mm-hmm.
It's either it basically has to be due to the way the Ravens defense has performed this year, that the rain impacted both passing offenses. Both quarterbacks had less than a 50% completion percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Or Marcus Peters was, despite everybody's wanting to shit all over him, was a difference maker in this pass defense,
mm-hmm.
which is very possible.
Yeah.
PFF has him as like a top 4 corner this year, top 4 graded corner this year. The Seahawks were the only team that really have exploited him, and the book on him is that he's prone to double moves, but he's high risk, high reward type of guy, and this game just happened to be a high reward game. The Seahawks tried to get the ground game going, and Chris Carson had 3 yards a carry. The Ravens rushed it 9 more times than the Seahawks and had almost double the rushing production. So both teams ran the ball quite a bit. The Seahawks found themselves behind late, and so Russell Wilson threw it a whole bunch.
Yeah. In the rain.
Yeah. So, the pass rush I thought was pretty good, but Russell Wilson, I mean, the escapability is absolutely crazy. And he's so fucking infuriating to play against. It's stupid. I'm basically, just like the Ravens defense said before the week, you got a taste of what it's like to play against Lamar Jackson, because like he escapes and then receivers become uncovered. And that's the one thing that Russell Wilson does better than Lamar Jackson. I don't think anybody would argue the opposite, is passing when he escapes like that. It's uncanny. But the Ravens stood up, and late in the game, the Seahawks offense just couldn't get it going. So it was a really, really good team win. And as far as the Ravens offense goes, you could call it regression or progression, depending on how you want to look at it. Mark Andrews fucking killed them in this game. He had 8 targets and 2 catches. Everyone knows he's Lamar's favorite target.
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, he spread the ball around pretty nicely when asked to throw, but it was a close game the whole time. The Ravens should be and are built to be a run-first team, and they ran the ball very, very effectively. Even take out Lamar's rushing, they still ran the ball for like 4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
So Lamar inflates that stuff, but they still ran the ball at the standard, which is the standard for good rushing, which is pretty much 4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
It was a good team win. It's hard to win on the road in Seattle. That's a notorious hard place to win. And everybody was talking about the Seahawks being a dark horse, and have we been overlooking the Seahawks heading into this game? And I think that the Ravens, that's a statement win for them so far this year, for sure.
Yeah, so I think if we take ourselves back to, episode, I don't know, remember 3 or 4 of, I guess, week 3 or 4 of the preseason, when we kind of had all said, we think that the Seahawks will be the divisional litmus test, right? So what does this mean for all of the teams, So for the Ravens, it means that they passed, even under some pretty tough conditions that they kind of passed. For the Browns, it means that kind of what people thought, right? They have a good team that lacks experience, cohesion, and the ability to shoot themselves in the foot, right? Because the Browns played well, but they had just questionable play calling, bad penalties, the same shit from the refs, right? Whatever. Let's just put it in a box and fucking put it somewhere else. But yeah, they could not close it. Could not close the deal. So basically what the Browns are. For the Steelers, I'm not sure what it really says for them. I guess maybe we can ask Chad on that to give us his input for what does that mean if the Seahawks are still the divisional litmus test, which I think at this point we can say kind of are a good one. And then the Bengals, like, whatever, man. So I think that going into the tough part of your season for the Ravens, getting that first win in the tough part of your season, again, like it's such a big deal. Like, I feel like the Ravens' schedule has been very ideal for them. And I'm obviously not going down the road of like, the only reason they're going to continue to do this well is because of how good, how well placed their schedule was. But like to play those early teams, to build Lamar's confidence, right, was fucking awesome. Then even to get that loss, was good to humble, right? And then to come in and get a win against a team that people are saying is a playoff contender, and then going into, again, the hard part of your schedule, getting that win. Like, I think this is working out very well for the Ravens as far as the team cohesion goes. And just honestly, divisional record, man. Like,
yeah,
it's when you're 5-2, sure, it can be easy to fall off the train and slip up, but it's much easier to be 5-2 and sustain a good season than it is to be 2-5 and make a good season out of it. Even if you have a bunch of easy opponents coming forward, which we'll get to next week. But yeah, man. If you're a Ravens fan, you got to be fucking happy.
Their tough stretch is certainly coming up. This was the start of the tough stretch. That's what everybody was talking about. The 4 out of the next 5 games with Cincinnati in the middle. Mm-hmm. And to get that first win on the road in Seattle and have the fortune of not only coming back home for the Patriots, but coming back home and playing the Patriots off a bye week is as ideal as it gets going into, the relative murderer's row that they have coming up. So, I mean, they've got Pats, Bengals, then I think Texans.
Yes.
Niners or Texans, Rams, something like that.
Well, yeah, the Rams, Texans, and Niners. I don't remember the exact order. Actually, I have it pulled up right here. So it's Patriots, Bengals, Texans, Rams, Niners. And then Bills, I mean, maybe we don't know what of the Bills, but right. And then Jets, Browns, Steelers.
So Jimmy Smith will be coming back sometime in that stretch. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully Hollywood is back for most of that. And we'll just see Lamar Jackson just keep developing, keep improving, getting command of the offense, and the Ravens just find their identity, find who they are, and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much wraps up week 7 of the NFL. We only had 2 teams, but this episode went longer than both of us expected.
Yeah.
But for good reasons.
In the beginning about some other stuff too.
Yeah, for good reasons.
Good.
We had a lot of interaction, talked a lot with some of you guys that were here live. If you're still here, hey, thanks for coming, thanks for interacting, thanks for sticking around. But we would love more of that stuff. So please do so. Come hang out with us, talk with us, ask us questions, make it more relevant to what you want to hear us talk about, the questions you have for us, so we can kind of provide our input, which is awesome. as always. But yeah, NFL Week 7, it's in the books. Those two teams, Ravens going into a bye. Bengals don't have their bye just yet, but the Ravens will be going into the bye week. And we'll be coming back with the Steelers and the Browns coming off of their bye. So we'll talk about that next episode, which will be tomorrow, actually. Because if you're watching this is Wednesday. We had to push it back a day instead of the normal Tuesday. However, tomorrow, 9:30, Thursday, we will be recording. We will be talking Browns, Patriots, and some other football games that are happening. I don't really know. But that should be good stuff. So come back with that.
Yeah,
Facebook.
The Steelers are playing the Sisters of Mercy Catholic Church in Miami.
Yeah. So Facebook Live, we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube. Come watch us on those tomorrow, 9:30. Interact with us. We're going to try to have Dylan on. We're still trying to work out some kinks with some schedules and stuff, but it should be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time frame. So yeah, should be good. Players of the week this week. I mean, is it just gonna be like 2 Ravens and 2 Ravens? Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I thought about that earlier today, but it was just like we could just put like for defensive player of the week, just put like Marcus Peters and see which picture people like better.
There you go. I'll just tell you who the players of the week were. The offensive player of the week was Lamar Jackson because he became an NFL man this weekend.
Yeah.
And the defensive player of the week was Marcus Peters. Marlon Humphrey said after the game that Marcus Peters was calling out plays through the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
It was also helping to pick up his teammates on the sideline. That's some leadership shit. Marcus Peters has some character attacks in his career, but his teammates like him as much as authority figures may not. And then also, Marcus Peters was only targeted 3 times in Seattle. It was 2 incomplete passes and the pick 6, which was actually in the second quarter. I got him and the Lamar run flip-flopped. After the pick 6, Russell Wilson never targeted Marcus Peters again for the final 35 minutes of the game.
That's important. It really is.
So, I mean, for a free agent pickup in an ailing secondary, like that is a huge boost. So,
absolutely.
Marcus Peters, AFC North / Baltimore Ravens defensive player of the week because the Bengals lost to the Jags. So, I mean, come on.
Poorly. So, but yeah. So, tomorrow, Thursday at 9:30, come check us live while we preview the games that are upcoming this weekend. Watch us on Facebook Live, watch us on YouTube, watch us on Twitch, wherever you stream live people doing things live. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like I said, thanks for the listens or the interactions. Gary says Marcus Peters was a steal. Simple as that, and I have to agree.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure.
Eric DaCosta should have his fucking hands cut off.
I mean, I don't know, man. If you have a player that's on your team that really is like not all in anymore, you know, sometimes it's good to put them away. But also sometimes that says a lot about your coaching staff and their ability to kind of pull people together, which we'll talk about next week. But anyways, yeah, this has been the longest fucking outro since, you know, the beginning of fucking outros. So thanks for coming by. Thanks for joining. Join us next week when we talk about stuff. Take it easy, everybody.
And to tease, I have a fun fact tomorrow.
What's up?
I'm just teasing it. I'm going to have a really fun fact tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
So tune in.
Tune in. You don't want to miss it. You will not want
Joey's
to miss
world-renowned fun fact segment.
Absolutely. All right. Take it easy, everybody.
Later.